Marketplace opened doors for Elvis aficionados and bubble wrap entrepreneurs to become one of the Internet's most lucrative businesses. This talk from the Commonwealth Club in San Jose, California, is 50 minutes.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's program of the Commonwealth Club Silicon Valley, brought to you from the Media Center in Palo Alto. My name is Melinda Thomas, and I will be your chair for this evening. We'd like to welcome the listeners of WAMK-FM 90.9 in Kingston, New York, one of the 225 stations joining us nationwide for America's longest-running radio program. It is my pleasure to introduce award-winning journalist and author Mike Malone, who will introduce our guest speaker and serve as our moderator for this evening. Mike is the editor of Forbes ASAP, the world's largest business and technology magazine, and a weekly columnist for abcnews.com. He has worked on a number of TV documentaries, including his last project and book, Betting It All, The Technology Entrepreneurs, which became a 16-part PBS series last year.
Thanks, Melinda. Adam Cohen is a member of the editorial board of the New York Times and author of The Perfect Store, Inside eBay. He was previously chief technology writer for Time magazine and is the co-author of American Pharaoh, Mayor Richard J. Daley, His Battle for Chicago and the Nation. He is a graduate of Harvard College and Harvard Law School and lives in New York. Adam is the only journalist to be granted total access into the world of eBay. Okay, Adam, what does total access mean?
Well, they actually printed up an employee ID for me with my name on it. They gave me a conference room, the Vienna conference room for trivia buffs, and I moved in for a few weeks, and people came to me. You know, I spent my lifetime as a reporter hunting down sources, so this was quite nice.
Okay, is that one of those things where you embrace the enemy to keep them close? I mean, is this getting a little too close to the people you're writing about?
They were taking a risk, and I know that they were nervous about what I would write. They didn't see it until it came out in print, and I know they were nervous up until the very end. And there's some negative stuff in there. There's quite a bit, but I do think overall they're not unhappy with the book.
So they hold any Potemkin meetings where you went in and they talked about doing good for mankind just for your benefit to write the book?
Probably. I don't know if
did they keep you out of anything? Could you barge into a board meeting or something? And
well, there was one group that I wanted to talk to that I kept getting removed from my schedule, and they kept saying, oh, they're not quite available, and I never did talk to that group, but other than that.
So were there any rules stipulated on what you could attend, what you could participate in, who you could talk to?
It was really on a case-by-case basis, but they really, they were pretty forthcoming. They let me visit a number of their offices around the world. I went to their Utah back offices, which I think very few people have been to. And
is that the great server farm, or?
No, it's actually the customer service department. And
worse.
Yeah, well, no, but they said, do whatever you want, watch them while they answer any emails you want. So of course I said, oh, could you have this fellow answer the emails that come in from users of the adult part of the site? And that was actually a lot of fun.
So you were inside 3 weeks?
2 weeks, but then also Berlin, London, Utah, and a few other places.
It's a pretty good gig.
It was very nice.
Now, who'd you talk to that wasn't with the company anymore? Disgruntled ex-employees are always a good source of information.
Yeah, I did talk to a few of them, and actually some of the people that I talked to were removed from the company during the course of the project, so their disgruntlement grew. I talked to many people on all sides. I also talked to, quote, eBay radicals, people who hate eBay out in the community, and one woman who does a newsletter basically every day attacking eBay, saying what it's done in the last 24 hours that she objects to, and she and actually another eBay radical who I talked to led the Million Auction March in the summer of 2000, where they moved 1 million auctions off of eBay to Yahoo and Amazon and other rival auction sites. So I really did try to talk to all sides.
Okay, how about the founders? Because they can be pretty hard to get a hold of.
You know, what started all this off is I was working for a magazine. They said, do a story on eBay. I didn't know that much about eBay at the time. And my editor said, oh, by the way, the founder, Pierre Omidyar, has moved to Paris, so you'll have to fly to Paris and have coffee with him for 2 days on the Champs-Elysees. And I thought, okay, I'll do that. And I did. And I did meet with Pierre for 2 days in a cafe on the Champs-Elysees. We talked about eBay, how he founded it, what his views were about the internet and commerce. And I came back with hours and hours of tapes, and I used them for the story I wrote, but I also realized this was a very rich subject. And I talked to Pierre more later on, but those hours of tapes from Paris were the heart of the book, really.
How about Jeff Skoll, the co-founder? How about Meg Whitman?
I talked to Jeff a lot. I actually shadowed Jeff around a little bit when I spent time at eBay, went to some meetings with him. Meg Whitman was extremely accessible. And all the way down, Mary Lou Song, the #3 employee, was, I think, the best source of all. She was there from the very beginning, and she's someone who loves eBay. She's also a little concerned about the direction it's gone since it went public. She was very forthcoming. She was a great source.
Well, let's talk about Mary Lou, because she appears to have created the great eBay myth. And a lot of the attention on your book has centered around your debunking of the great Pez legend. So what's the true story?
Well, you know, I talked to Mary Lou at length when I was out at eBay, and she told me in passing, it wasn't something she wanted to make a big point of, but that the Pez myth was a myth. And I thought at the time, you know, a year and a half from now when this book comes out, that'll be a very big deal, but let's just kind of sit on it until then. And the real story was, she was the #3 employee at eBay. She was the first PR person back in 1996. She was trying to get journalists interested in eBay, and no one was. No one believed that strangers would trade with strangers on the internet. They didn't believe this auction model would work, and there was so much else going on that Mary Lou literally could not break through the clutter. One day she made up this story. She knew Pam, who was then Pierre's fiance, knew that she did collect Pez dispensers, and thought, rather than keep trying to sell reporters on, you know, here's this computer geek who wanted to create the perfect market, why not say he did it for this romantic reason? It worked, and the company embraced the story. Pierre went around telling it. Meg tells the story. I was just at their new lobby that they've installed at eBay headquarters, and there are Pez dispensers everywhere, and I said to them, get them out, get them out. Although one executive said to me this weekend that he was in their Washington office where they do lobbying, and he saw a form that they had prepared, I guess, for Congress about the company, and it had also mentioned the Pez dispenser story, but someone had crossed it out. So history's changing.
So what's the real truth about the founding of eBay?
The real truth is much more prosaic. Pierre was trying to get in on an IPO for a video game company in the summer of 1996, or the spring actually. He had a Charles Schwab account online. He tried to get in on the IPO, and rather naively, I think, he thought he had a chance to get, you know, IPO shares along with everyone else, and he got shut out. When his trade cleared, it was for 50% more than the offering price. He realized that insiders had gotten a better deal, and he thought, you know, we have this big stock market. It's supposed to be a market, but it's completely, you know, rigged. And he wanted to create a perfect market where insiders and outsiders, people in the know and out of the know, would all have the same opportunity.
So the initial name of the company was?
The initial name of the company was Auction Web, but he had his own personal website that was called eBay. He liked the name Echo Bay. He actually tried to register echobay.com, but Echo Bay Mines, a Canadian mining company, had already registered it for their homepage. He shortened it to eBay, and he created Auction Web on the eBay homepage that he already had up and running. But he had a few other weird things on there, including, for some reason, Pierre was a great fan of, fan may be too strong a word, but was very interested in the Ebola virus. So he had created a page about the Ebola virus, about various outbreaks, and literally in the early days, people had to click past this description of, you know, this flesh-eating disease in order to list an item on eBay.
Now, their offices, if I remember, in the early days were filled with giant cutout Star Wars characters. What was that all about?
Pierre had many strange interests. That was one. It was also filled with beach chairs. It was a very informal place. Literally, the early offices were, the furniture was card tables and beach chairs. And when they had a company meeting, which was about 6 people, they would all circle their beach chairs and talk about the direction the company should take.
And then they developed something called the War Room, which looked like the inside of an army tent in the middle of World War II. It was full of army surplus goods and that sort of thing. What was that?
Absolutely. Camouflage, netting hanging from the ceiling. That was when Amazon got into the auction space, and they felt that war had been declared. And Jeff Skoll, the co-founder, decided to really get into war mode. They actually issued dog tags to the employees, and they regarded it as war. And one of the themes, actually, that I came across in the book is we now think of eBay as being this incredible success, but they were worried at every stage that an Amazon, a Yahoo, or an AOL was going to come in and completely wipe out the company. So they did regard it as war.
Didn't Yahoo give them an ultimatum saying, either sell out to us or we'll just run you into the ground?
They did, and they did something that was very hard-edged. They actually announced that they were getting into the personal auction space a couple weeks before eBay's IPO, literally when Meg and Pierre and the rest of the folks were on the road trying to sell investors on the company. So that was a little bit sharp-edged, and as we know who won that battle, and we also know at one point Yahoo had a market cap of $95 billion and was going to buy eBay, and I think eBay was delighted when its own market cap passed Yahoo's, and it would be the other way around.
Now, there were an awful lot of auction online sites when eBay got started. They're all gone. Why did eBay succeed where the other ones didn't? Was there something in their business model?
It was a few things. There was actually one quite large, well-funded one around in Labor Day of 1995 when Pierre came up with eBay. It's sort of a little-known story, but there was a site called On Sale, which was very well-funded, very well-publicized. There were articles about it in the Wall Street Journal and everything. They had the wrong business model, though. On Sale actually took possession of goods, mainly overstock, remaindered items. They had warehouses, they held the auctions, they sold it, they shipped it out. And that was a bad model because they had a lot of expenses. Pierre's model was brilliant because it was just a website connecting buyers and sellers. So all they had to do was keep the website up and running and take a little cut off of each auction. And as Pierre saw, the checks just came in, and it was very hard to compete with that.
Well, that brings us to a question from a member of the audience. And just to paraphrase it, why would anybody participate in an eBay auction? You're dealing with strangers, completely based on trust, going through a website that isn't holding the goods, isn't guaranteeing the goods, isn't holding the money. It doesn't fit with the traditional auction model that had been proven over hundreds of years. Why did this work at all?
Well, in fact, that's what Pierre heard when he first got the site launched. It was what he heard when he went on the Vision Tour of 1997 and tried to get the national press interested in the site. And again, that's what people said. But, you know, it's kind of like the bumblebee, which they say theoretically shouldn't be able to fly, but does. Yeah, all the arguments are that no one would actually do an auction on eBay, but boy, they sure do. And we saw it again with eBay Motors. When someone at eBay, a guy named Simon Rothman, proposed that they start selling cars on the site, even people at eBay said, okay, we understand Beanie Babies, we understand, you know, golf clubs, but people are not going to buy cars from people in other states that they've never met, you know. But in fact, they're selling $1 billion of cars a year on the site right now. It's their biggest item. So again, theoretically it shouldn't work, but boy, it really does.
Okay, so what's with the logo? One of the memorable things about eBay is that logo.
Yeah, and in the early days, when it was Auction Web, it was a really ugly site. Mary Lou, who we've spoken about, compared the site to a dirty old newspaper when she saw it. And but over time, they did develop this great logo. And I talked for the book with the branding guy who thought it up. And a lot of thought went into it. The colors, the fact that all the letters aren't lined up. It was supposed to be a little bit iconoclastic. And the branding guy actually said that when they came up with this logo, that it had a little bit of the ponytail about it. And Pierre, of course, had a ponytail when he was working at eBay. So it was all thought out.
Why'd you call the book The Perfect Store? To use the standard stereotypical first question. I'll use it right now. Okay, well, it really was the perfect business model, and that was what animated Pierre from the beginning. He wanted to create a store that anyone could come to on an equal basis, anywhere in the globe. So it was that idea of perfection that I really got out of my early interviews with Pierre. To me, that was what eBay was always about. And then, you know, doing a little pun on the perfect storm thought, you know, seemed like it would be a little clever joke. So. Now, reportedly, a number of companies tried to buy eBay early on, besides Yahoo. Who else was in the game?
Well,
I think you missed one in the book, because Knight Ridder offered him money too.
Oh, Knight Ridder's in there. Yeah. No, Knight Ridder is in there, but not. I focus more on the Times Mirror story. And you know what was amazing is that along with all the brilliant decisions they made, some of this was just luck. And one lucky thing was Pierre and Jeff were willing to sell eBay for $50 million to Times Mirror. Times Mirror didn't think it was worth $50 million, and they, you know, Pierre and Jeff were ready to walk away. And you know what's interesting is that not that long ago, Times Mirror was bought by the Chicago Tribune Company. I think at the time, the whole Times Mirror company was worth about $4 billion. eBay's worth like 20, so you know, another huge mistake.
So Times Mirror offered 45. I think Knight Ridder offered 40. Who else tried to buy them?
Amazon invited Meg and Pierre up to Amazon headquarters and talked about buying them. And Meg told me that, you know, Jeff Bezos was saying how, you know, Amazon's so great. We have all these warehouses. We have all these things you don't have. And Meg and Pierre just came back and said, we don't want all those warehouses. You know, we're doing fine without it. So,
Well, let's talk about Meg.
yeah.
I mean, she probably is the critical player in the story, even more than the founders. How did they find her, and what was her first reaction when she was approached by these guys with this little auction company?
They had hired a headhunting firm, and Meg's name showed up on a list. And Meg did not want to interview for the job. She did it as a favor to the headhunter because he was well known in Silicon Valley, and she thought down the road he might have a better offer for her. So why alienate him? She had not really used the internet very much at all. But when she came out, she was very intrigued by it. And one thing that really intrigued.
She came out of the game world, right? Toys.
She had been at Hasbro. She had been at Disney. Yeah, she was actually marketing Mr. Potato Head when they called on her, she was very impressed with Pierre and everybody, but also really impressed with these profit margins, which were, you know, above 80% and just unlike anything that existed in the offline world. So she was intrigued. They were interviewing a number of people, some more prominent than her, but the key to the search was actually a word that Pierre had used from the beginning, which was they were looking for someone who was eBaysian. And they described to me how one top executive from an East Coast firm came out, and he flew out first class, and he showed up at eBay headquarters in a limousine. And you know, eBay headquarters was even then just a complete dump. And they knew this was not the guy they wanted, but Meg was down to earth and completely got it. She was eBaysian, and she was their first choice, and it was an incredible match.
Did she have any shock going from the giant corporation to eating lunch at Jamba Juice next door to, you know, the beat-up, rent-up space eBay headquarters? You
know, she's very down to earth even now, so I don't think that was a concern at all, and she works out of a cubicle rather than an office, but she had a shock that being in the internet is just very different from the entire career she'd had so far. For one thing, being in such immediate contact with her customers, she said, you know, you do something on eBay and you immediately get 1,000 emails, and things also happen in such real time. You know, she was under the gun from the minute she got there, but she really likes it.
Now, an interesting thing seems to occur when Meg Whitman arrives, and that is Pierre starts to fade away.
Yeah, you know, we think of all these tech legends like, you know, Bill Gates and Michael Dell, who, you know, they are the company, and, you know, you'll have to carry them out, you know, for them to leave. But Pierre knew from the beginning. He told Mary Lou, actually, before eBay was anything, he said he wanted to do it for 2 years, and then he and Pam wanted to move to Paris, and Pam was taking French lessons. His game plan was always to get out, and he got out very early.
And now he's in Vegas?
He's in Vegas a little bit. He's in Paris. He dabbles a little bit in, you know, he does serious philanthropy. He dabbles a little bit in some entrepreneurial stuff. But, you know, he and Pam have a kid, and he's having a great life. Now,
I'm just as intrigued by Jeff Skoll, because he does stick around, but he moves consciously out of the limelight and he prefers to stay out of the limelight through all the success, through the write-ups in Forbes magazine about the richest Americans and all that.
Absolutely. Jeff was very low-key, and part of it also is that once Meg was brought in, you can't have two leaders. I mean, it was Meg's show at that point. But Jeff actually, fascinatingly, took on a very different role after Meg came in. At the beginning, he was the hardcore, he was the MBA, he was the one who was doing the business plans. He was the one making sure the company worked financially. When Meg comes in, he actually becomes the champion of the community, making sure that profits aren't the whole thing. And when I was there, I actually went to some meetings with him where they talked about how to stay in touch with the community. And he was sort of the community czar towards the end. And now he's also stepped aside and is doing a lot of philanthropy.
Okay, well, let's talk about the community, because in many ways, eBay is its community. How would you characterize an eBayer, and how important is the community to the operations of the firm?
Completely critical. And you know, eBay just had its first ever eBay Live in Anaheim this month, and I went to it, and there was a great air of expectation among myself and the eBay staff, because honestly, we all wondered what 5,500 eBay people would look like. And I was reading the message boards going into it, and literally people were saying, you know, I'm behind my computer all the time, I don't get it out of the house much, what would I wear to this? One woman posted that she wasn't sure if she'd wear shoes. So we were all kind of wondering what the community would look like. And, you know, they were great. It was a wonderful gathering. And, you know, when you talk to members of the community, each one has just the most mind-blowing story of what they do on eBay. Within a half hour, 3 people came up to me, and I asked each of them what they did. I was asking everyone what they did. One guy sold license plates on eBay. And I said, oh, that sounds like a nice business. And he said, no, these are expensive license plates. They go for $1,000 or more. And he owned license plates from Alaska before Alaska had roads. He sells them on eBay and he's doing great. Second woman sells tools on eBay, tiny tools, she said, only tools that like a jeweler uses or for eyeglasses. That's her business. And as I said to her, you couldn't open a store where you sold tiny tools. You couldn't get enough foot traffic, but on eBay with 50 million users, you can. And the last guy said that he sold spa equipment, parts for hot tubs. And I said, you know, what does it even mean? He said there's one part of a hot tub that apparently goes out all the time, and he sells it new. His father-in-law makes them. That's his business. So this is the eBay community, and it's, you know, startling every time you meet one of them.
How many total users are there right now?
About 50 million.
I heard on the news today that it has the greatest number of hits per day, and I guess also the most stickiness of any site out there.
Very sticky, and that was Pierre's original idea of combining community with commerce. People are definitely hitting it to log in and follow their auctions and to bid on auctions, but these message boards that Pierre created and that have really grown over time, people spend a lot of time, Elvis Presley collectors, meeting with Elvis Presley collectors, talking about that time they saw Elvis in Tupelo, Mississippi in 1972. So it's a social as well as a commercial activity.
So 50 million users, how much money is exchanging hands per day?
Well, there's 7 million auctions going on at any given moment, so
Okay.
quite a bit.
Now, how about the way that eBay rewards that community for participating? There's a star system, correct? And there's also power sellers.
Exactly.
Now, what are they?
Well, there's a star system based on how much feedback you get. You get feedback after transactions. Power sellers are people who have reached one of 3 levels of activity on the site. I know the woman, Karin Stahl, who invented the word power seller. eBay tries to be egalitarian in their community, and she rejected names like, you know, super seller. She was looking for a word that denoted that you were active, but that you weren't better than anyone else. And now there are even more levels, and they just announced a titanium level. People who sell $150,000 a month on eBay, which is just, you know, mind-boggling, who are going to get special privileges because of that.
So besides social cachet, what do you get for being a platinum seller or a super seller?
Well, at the
tchotchkes?
No, at the lower levels, you get eBay buddies who will help you with some of your customer service problems, which is actually very helpful. The titanium level, though, and I guess there aren't that many yet, they're actually going to get to go on annual retreats with top eBay management, so that's a pretty cool deal.
Now, I know a woman who runs a small antique shop in North Bend, Oregon, and she struggled along for years. Very few cars going by on a given day, and she was lucky. She got 1 or 2 of those cars. Went on eBay, created a persona called Princess Glitz, and she actually now uses the antique store essentially as a storage area for her eBay work, and she's probably quadrupled her income. How many people out there? Are there any estimates of how many people out there have changed their professions to become full-time eBay sellers?
There are thought to be over 100,000 people right now who just earn their living on eBay, and I met a lot of them at eBay Live. But I thought you were going to get into the flip part of that, which is there is some thought that eBay may be driving some antique dealers out of the business through that old word disintermediation that we heard all the time during the internet boom that everyone thought didn't exist. But in fact, it's harder and harder for antique dealers to prove that they're needed, because right now people can put their own stuff up on eBay. And I profile in the book an antique dealer who said that he had this network of pickers, as they're called, that he developed over 20 years, people who found things at garage sales and brought them to him, the dealer, for him to sell at his store. And he now finds the pickers don't need him anymore. He said, I've knocked on pickers' doors, people I've worked with for 20 years, they don't open the door. They're putting the stuff up directly on eBay. So people like him, this antique dealer, have to continue to find a way to remain relevant in the eBay age.
How about secondary markets? Companies that are being created, or individuals that are building things specifically for eBay, or side businesses, or selling software to help you become a better, like sniping in the last millisecond before an auction closes.
Exactly.
How big is that business?
There's a lot of that. There are big companies like OnDelay and Auction Watch that sell software that help sellers to manage all their auctions. But there also
But now eBay went after Auction Watch, hammer and tong, at one point.
Yeah, but you know, all these folks were at eBay Live, so eBay's kind of realizing that it's in their interest to
Don't
get
fight
on
them,
it.
embrace them.
Exactly, but there also are these charming, quirky stories of individuals who have found a way to be useful to the the eBay process. One is, as you mentioned, sniping software, which is software that allows you to get into an auction in the final seconds. And for the book, I actually tracked down the first guy who created sniping software. This guy lives in basically a hunting shack in Northern California. He hunts wild boar in his spare time. He's a high school graduate. He taught himself how to program for computers off of books he bought on Amazon. He told me it's really easy, and I know it's not really easy. He wrote software to snipe, and he also, while I was interviewing him, actually, I looked down and I said, "Oh, what are my feet resting on?" And he said, "Well, technically those are assault rifles in the state of California." So he was a quirky fellow, but he invented this software that tens of thousands of people have bought. Another woman who's profiled in the book was selling tchotchkes on eBay, had a little business going, and was trying to cut down on her costs so she could make the business more profitable. Decided instead of buying bubble wrap that she wrapped it in at her local store, she'd get it directly from the manufacturer, brought the cost down. Then one day she decided, why not put the wholesale bubble wrap up on eBay, see if that sells to other eBay sellers? Well, she had a warehouse. She has a larger warehouse now. Her husband quit his job. Her parents work for her. A bunch of the neighbors do. She is shippingsupply.com, selling only to other eBay sellers, selling bubble wrap. She's the bubble wrap lady, only on eBay.
How many people have made $1 million off of eBay? Not just selling, but including the original employees. The first 75 or so all made over $1 million, didn't they?
I think that's right. I think anyone who had pre-IPO stock was basically somewhere in that neighborhood.
Pierre and Jeff made more than $1 billion. Meg made some fraction of $1 billion. And then the first cohort of employees before the IPO made several million.
Right.
Has anybody made more than $1 million selling on eBay yet?
I'm sure they have, since there is this titanium category of people who are selling $150,000 a month. But a lot of that, that really isn't tabulated. And I found, honestly, when I talked to eBay sellers, they were a little wary about talking about exactly how much money they made. And I think there were some IRS issues that I just tried to avoid.
There was,
yeah, exactly. Here's how much I earn, and here's how I spell my name. No.
Yeah, and I don't have any receipts.
Right.
Is there some sort of asymptotic limit out there? You get this feeling that with so many millions of items being sold, we're beginning to basically just recycle America's addicts over and over and over again. Are they going to run out of goods?
Well, you say that like it's a bad thing, but if we can keep moving things from people who have gotten tired of them to people who are excited by them, that increases.
It's a net social good.
Absolutely. Yeah. So why would we complain? But also, what eBay likes to point out is, although the company has grown so much, still in even its core areas like coins, it only has about 1 or 2% of the market. They're looking at the other 98%. There's also the global part of eBay. About 21% of its revenues are now overseas, and there are many big markets, including Japan, that they have yet to conquer.
How about B2B? You begin to notice more and more manufactured goods, industrial supplies, that sort of thing, showing up on eBay.
Absolutely, B2B and B2C. And yeah, that's a huge growth area. And in fact, they're working on some new initiatives in that. But yeah, now we're seeing Sun Microsystems using eBay as a distribution channel for $20,000, $30,000 servers. And there's going to be more of that. And also, since eBay takes a cut of each transaction, it's very excited about those sales.
Well, let's talk about price per unit. If I remember, at the very beginning of eBay, someone sold a broken Christmas ornament for 19 cents. And it sort of became a benchmark for eBay to constantly move up the per unit price, to go from selling toys and that sort of thing to selling cars, to selling estates, to selling businesses, that sort of thing. What is the per unit average price right now, and where does eBay want to go?
When I last looked, I think it was in the $20 or so range, but that was a while ago. eBay has this tension. They don't want to lose the small sellers. They don't want to lose the Beanie Baby people, and that's one reason they had eBay Live. That is still the heart and soul of the community. But I was at a meeting where Meg talked to just a room full of like 100 Wall Street analysts, and their questions were ASP, 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 which is average sales price, and they see that as key to earnings. So what Meg has definitely done is brought in the big sellers, brought in the Disneys and the HPs and so forth, but also hold eBay Live events because they don't want to lose the small volume sellers.
Well, what about these big outfits in the M&A category? They've been doing a lot of acquisitions, like Butterfield and Butterfield.
Yeah.
They going to continue doing that, or they got
Well,
what they need?
You know, they've actually, one of the brilliant things they did was actually be very restrained about M&A. At a time when Amazon was scooping up anything that ended in .com and you know, paying, you know, millions and tens of millions and hundreds of millions
Cisco
for it.
too, yeah.
Cisco too. eBay did not do that. They really looked at things that served their purpose. So one thing they bought was a small auction site called Up for Sale, which was actually doing a great job and also was free. And eBay decided this was not a good competitor to have in the market for long, so they bought it. And there was all this talk about how they were going to integrate Up for Sale into the business, and in fact, the site kind of disappeared. So that was one case where eBay kind of eliminated a competitor. Another brilliant move they did was buying Half.com. Half.com was like eBay, but it was fixed price. And eBay was so busy with auctions, they never got around to doing a fixed price alternative. And they realized that once Half got started, that it was almost too late to catch up. Half was growing like a young eBay, started by a young entrepreneur in Philadelphia. And about 6 months into Half's existence, eBay bought it. And I think they realized if they didn't buy it soon, you know, they'd have a major rival on their hands.
One of the things I've noticed about eBay, talking about this core group of people, the true eBayers, the Beanie Baby people, is that every time eBay has tried to do something without their permission, all hell is broken loose. They have a mutiny on their hands.
Absolutely, and it's one of the most fun parts of the eBay story was getting them to tell me these tales of community uprisings. About a week into my visit there, someone said, "You know about the toaster ad incident, don't you?" And of course, you know, I didn't, but I demanded to know. And at one point, eBay actually put up an ad with a toaster with smoke coming out of it, a piece of toast burning, and it said, you know, is your toaster on the blank? Come to, you know, our website, and it was for a major hardware store, get a new toaster. Well, the toaster selling community on eBay, and they were there, got up in arms, and they said this is the first time that eBay was actually taking ads for people who were competing with the community, people who were selling on the site. And it actually was something that the whole community rallied around because everyone saw their own business eventually being competed with, and eBay backed down on the toaster ad. They took it down, and Meg made a commitment. She said, we're not going to compete with our community again in the future.
Now, there was a period, a couple, 3 years back, where 1 year eBay seemed to go through every possible disaster. The servers went down, they were hacked. I think the SEC was looking into them. They raised their prices, or they changed their price structure, and the eBayers mutinied. What happened? Did they just lose track of where they were?
Well, it's really been a process of trial by error, and also, you know, with an internet company, things just happen that are beyond your control. I mean, the darkest day in eBay's history, of course, was the summer of 1999, when the website went down for 22 hours, and as Meg and Pierre told me, they actually had a conversation during the time where they realized it might never come up again. eBay might not have ever been able to restore itself. Of course, they could have started up again, but all that data would have been lost. And that was a very dark hour. A lot of what eBay has done since then has been reacting to that. They've built in redundancy. Maynard Webb, who they brought in to do their technology, was just promoted, actually just today, to Chief Operating Officer. They've really tried to learn from their mistakes.
Now, when they began, they spoke of not policing the site. They wanted to have it be free in an open market, and, you know, Pierre's vision of everybody playing. And then people started selling body parts and things like that. At what point did they decide that maybe we ought to police this thing a little bit?
Well, it's been a constant struggle between the libertarian instinct and a few things. One is legal concerns. They banned guns from the site, another community uproar, one that they did not back down on. They banned guns from the site shortly after a Brooklyn jury came in with a verdict against gun manufacturers for negligent marketing, and eBay realized we could be sued if a gun is bought on eBay and used in a crime. So they've done things like that throughout the course of their history, but also, you know, some of it has been much more haphazard. They did a whole evaluation of their adult site, and they made some new rules when Meg got a complaint from a grandmother who was searching for a doll for her granddaughter and was just amazed what the word doll brought up.
An inflatable one, huh?
Yeah, she didn't know about these dolls, so they've really tried to adapt over time.
The company also experienced as fast of a run-up as any company in history, I would imagine. I think the stock originally opened at, what, $12? And if you include, at the peak of the boom, including all the splits, the same share of stock was worth about $850. Companies that grow that fast oftentimes tear themselves to pieces. How did eBay keep from doing that?
Well, yeah, when I first met Pierre, which was in the fall of 1999, he was 32 years old and he was worth $4 billion. And, you know, it's just...
Cut off his ponytail.
He did. He was kind of dressed up for the occasion, for the interview. That was nice of him. Yeah, I mean, part of it is just that Pierre and Jeff are truly such down-to-earth people. They continue to drive their old beat-up cars, not to make a statement, but because that's the kind of people they were. And eBay spent a lot of time telling the employees, you know, remain eBaysian, don't, you know, go bragging about how much money you've made. And actually, the day of the IPO, they told people that you can check the stock price like once or twice, but that's it. So there was all this whispering with people trying to ask each other what the stock was up to. But they've really tried to keep it as a very modest place. And
but it changed.
It did change. And
as Mary Lou told you, it changed. I mean, it went from beat-up old Vegas in the parking lot to Porsches and, you know, that sort of thing.
And the old-timers will tell you part of what changed is that a different kind of employee came. Many more MBAs. The people who were there in the early days were not really qualified for their jobs. Literally, one of the early employees I talked to was hired by eBay because she was a hairdresser. She was cutting someone's hair, and her client said, oh, you should really drop a resume off at eBay. And they were so desperate for people that they hired her on the spot. But now it is MBAs. It's people who know about eBay stock growth. It's folks who are, you know, probably more there for the money, and also it's just so much larger. I mean, I was amazed going back there to headquarters today how many of the employees I talked to really don't have a sense of Pierre. They have no idea who Mary Lou was. You know, it was sort of sad.
Well, you could, on one hand, you could say that's inevitable for any great successful company, but on the other hand, that's also oftentimes the beginning of the end.
Yes, it could be, and I think with a different CEO, it could be a problem. But Meg really spent a lot of time with Pierre. I know she was very concerned about kind of picking up the DNA, and I really think she does have the eBaysian values. And you know, this eBay Live event was an example of that. Of really, she was down there with the community, really, and I don't mean down in a pejorative way, but she really is in touch with the users, and it was kind of charming to see that they treated her like a rock star. And they had printed up little trading cards with eBay employees on them, and there were Meg Whitman cards, and literally eBay users were running after Meg, you know, like a rock star, asking for her to autograph their cards. But you know, she is in touch with them.
So when does she get bored and move on?
Boy, that's a big question. You know, I mean, I always wonder, you know, if you have about $1 billion, why do you work 12, 15 hours a day?
And is there a line of succession behind her? There's nobody that has come out into the limelight. There
was someone who had been number 2 who it seemed like he might take over, but he's actually been he's
Who was
not.
that?
That was Brian Sweet, and he's actually no longer number 2. Maynard was just made number 2, Maynard Webb. I don't know if he's a successor, but I don't think Meg shows any signs of leaving, whereas Gary Bengier, who was the chief financial officer, a brilliant part of the original company, spent the last year traveling around the world with his family. You know, that's another way you can live your life.
I'll give you a question from the audience.
Yeah.
You seem to see Steve Wesley as a turning point. He is not listed as an informant. Informant's an interesting term. Was he cooperative?
Oh, Steve was a great informant. I don't know if I didn't list him, but no, Steve was a great informant and actually told me all kinds of good stuff. He was a complete turning point in the company. When he came in, he was a Stanford MBA. He brought 2 of his MBA students with him, and they were the first real business people at eBay. And it was not without tension. I mean, one of the things that people sort of whispered to me when I was there is they said, you know, he came in, I guess, September of 1997, and they said, you know, we dressed up as them for Halloween. We all like wore blue blazers and, you know, and nice shirts, and, you know, because they were so alien when they got there. But they did change the culture, but they also really built the company. They were crucial to eBay being what it is today.
I'm curious, so there's a rule around here that when a company builds a corporate headquarters, short the stock. And eBay seems to have always escaped doing that. They're still in the kind of worn executive office complex that they started out in.
Oh, yeah. If you're worried about the stock in that regard, they have really ugly offices. They had an opportunity early on to buy some offices that Apple had built and then couldn't move into. They turned it down, and I was shocked. I mean, one thing that has been true up until this year is they wouldn't even pay for an employee cafeteria, to the point that their employees have to walk across a very busy street, Hamilton Avenue, at lunchtime with like cars whizzing by to buy their lunches at Whole Foods. And I did see when I was there today that they have this little, very little eBay cafe. So they're saving their employees' lives. Maybe that's a good investment.
We have another question from the audience. Have you used eBay? What have you bought, sold, and how would you characterize the experience?
I've only bought, I haven't sold, but it's been great. This watch, a Swiss Army watch that I really wanted to get, and I actually was going to buy at Bloomingdale's, can I say that, for $240. I got it online, new on eBay for $50, and I've had it for a year and a half. It's great. I completely recommend the experience. These eyeglasses frames, they were discontinued when I went to my optometrist to get new glasses. He said they don't make them anymore. I went on eBay. There was an optometrist in Florida who had a cache of them, and I got them for less than half price. And then my favorite item I got is I got this little Turkish rug that was hand woven in Iran in the early 1960s that has a likeness of President John F. Kennedy with slightly Middle Eastern features, and only on eBay.
So what's the most expensive item you've bought?
The most expensive item I bought is I got in a really brutal bidding war for, there is a guy named John Fryer. He's a fine arts student in Iowa. He put his entire life up for sale on eBay. He had a party at his apartment. He invited all of his friends. They labeled everything he had, and he sold everything. And I, of course, wanted to have something just to be part of the experience for the book. I bought a tropical fish shirt for more than it was worth, but what came with the experience is that John actually then went around the country visiting his items. We had lunch in New York, and we had this completely surreal lunch where I was interviewing him for the book, and he's in the book, but he was interviewing me for his book, and now there's a picture of me up on his website. And then I was saying how weird this was, but then he also had to leave to go to Grand Central Station, where he was meeting a woman who had bought a 5-pound bag of sugar from his kitchen, and he was taking a photograph of her with the sugar. So I thought that was a good investment.
Well, let's talk about good investments. One claim that's been made is you really don't get that many bargains on eBay. That by the time the bidding is complete on anything that's worth buying, it's pretty well equal to or exceeded the retail price.
What I love about eBay is that the buyers tell me constantly things are so expensive. Now suddenly you're buying things for the highest price that anyone in the world is willing to pay for it. And they complain, one woman I quote in the book says, in the old days you go to a thrift store, there'd be a little bin in the corner with 8-track tapes and it would say $0.25. And she had a friend who bought an 8-track tape on eBay for $258. So she says it's just completely destroyed buying. But sellers, of course, all say, oh my God, it's driven prices down, you can't get good prices anymore. In fact, what you're seeing is the perfection of the market. Junk is being bid down as people empty out their attics, but the truly rare items are getting more than they've ever gotten before, and that's sort of what pricing should be.
So the days of the Duesenberg in the garage, in the barn in Enid, Oklahoma, are over because of eBay. Those things are being pulled out. They're being located.
And also the sort of, the serendipitous, you wander into the antique store and you see something that no one else has seen. There's a story in the book about the antique pickle jar. A guy had a pickle jar. He didn't know what it was worth. He put it up on eBay. And of course, the pickle jar collecting community, and you didn't know there was one, they found it and they began emailing him madly saying, is that an amber 1856, whatever? And within 2 days, they were actually showing up at his house and visiting the pickle jar and inspecting it. It was, in fact, amber. It was number 8, not number 6 or number 10. It was the rarest pickle jar in existence, and it went for $44,000.
There seems to be some sort of synergistic relationship between Antiques Roadshow and eBay. And I've noticed now that eBay is doing some sponsorships with Antiques Roadshow. What kind of connection is that? I mean, are we just, is this the zeitgeist now? We're all just obsessed with finding old, cheap stuff and buying and selling it?
There's a passion for collecting that, and when I went into this book, I thought, by the way, in addition to, figuring out what eBay was all about, I was going to figure out what collecting was about. I must say I failed at that miserably, but I spent a memorable weekend, one August, in Kansas City with people who collect antique clothing irons. They also collect antique clothing sprinkle bottles that you sprinkle water on the shirt. And also the third part of the antique clothing iron collecting trinity is anything with the Flatiron Building in Manhattan on it. They are incredibly passionate about this. They spend $15,000 and more for antique clothing irons on eBay. They're incredibly proud of their collections. I have no idea why they do it.
Well, for the same reason you buy your glasses on eBay.
This is practical. I need glasses. I can't see.
Now, eBay has transformed slowly, almost glacially over the last 6 years, from being a site that was a very plain vanilla site, very straightforward, listings driven by narrative, almost entirely narrative-driven site. Increasingly in the last 2 or 3 years, we've seen more and more imagery being put on the site. And people selling cars now sometimes will refer you to a link that will take you over and show you 200 photographs of their Ferrari Dino or whatever it is they're selling. Is this the direction eBay goes? Is this where the future is?
Absolutely. And one of the most, to me, amazing stories that I uncovered for my book was I found out a lot of people that I started talking to in the community said, do you know about Pongo? And Pongo turned out to be this early eBay celebrity who, she made her name, she was the first person to help people post little photos on their auctions back in 1996 when no one knew how to do this and no one had a digital camera. Pongo ended up being fascinating because she lives in Alaska and she actually is someone who had amnesia for 10 years and had a previous identity as a reporter in Seattle, and her family lost track of her for 10 years and wrote her off as dead, and she sort of reemerged on eBay, and it was, completely an amazing story. And anyway, it's in the book, but Pongo was there in the trenches when no one knew how to even put up that little black and white photo. Now, yes, all the things you're describing are true, and what I envision is as more people have broadband, as the internet becomes, bigger and faster, which it will, I imagine a virtual experience where you'll almost be able to walk in and, pick up that vase and turn it around, and that's all to the good, more information.
But there's a legacy issue involved in that too, and that is 5 years from now when broadband does get out there and you can go out and start the car and listen to the motor, there's still going to be this large contingent of eBayers at 56K. How is eBay going to drag these people along?
And they're completely attuned to that. In fact, today when I was at eBay just chatting with employees, you keep learning things and you wish you hadn't finished the book because you want to put them in. And I talked to one guy, I was asking him, well, what do you do at eBay? And he said he designs the site. And I said, well, what's happening with that? And he said, he said shush, but anyway, I'm going to say that he had just finished a new version.
Just between us.
Exactly, just the two of us. Don't tell anyone, but a new version of the website that is actually going to have slightly fewer graphics, and it's specifically for those 56K people. So they're actually simplifying right now. They're completely attuned to that base.
Does Meg see eBay as a fully broadband virtual experience in the years to come? Are they installing the servers, the real-time servers, to do that stuff right now?
I haven't heard that, but I figure if I keep saying it everywhere I go, and I sort of made it up myself, then maybe they'll do it. I feel they've done other things that I've spoken about. So anyway, I hope you're listening, Meg.
What's the most expensive item ever sold on eBay?
Last I heard, it was a Gulfstream jet that was bought by, I think, a commuter airline in Africa for $4.3 million. But they don't always keep such careful track of it.
G4 or G5. We know the difference in Silicon Valley.
We don't in Manhattan, so.
What about the role of celebrities in eBay's success? Rosie O'Donnell.
Absolutely.
Like
early on, Gloria Vanderbilt was on the site. I think it's helped, and Rosie's been a big booster, but I actually think, Oprah can make a book. There are things that celebrities really are influential in. I think eBay just was a force of its own.
One of the questions is, have you shown the book to Pierre, Meg, and Jeff, and have they read it, and do they have comments?
Meg, I know, read The Galleys. When I sent The Galleys, which is the early version of the book, to the folks at eBay, they immediately gave it to Meg, who told me that she was going into a meeting. I hope it wasn't an important meeting, but she said she just read The Galleys throughout the entire meeting and was basically done with the book when it was over. So that was pretty impressive. She said she really liked it a lot, and someone told me today that she's been going around eBay saying he's told all of our secrets, but she likes it, and I actually just autographed a book for her today. Pierre sent me a note. We auctioned off a copy of the book on eBay with all of their signatures for the eBay Foundation for charity, and Pierre sent me a note along when he signed it and sent it back to me saying that he hadn't read it yet. So I thought, gosh, there's so much about you, Pierre. Get on the ball.
You know, when CEOs and founders say they haven't read it yet, they've read it.
They've read it, okay.
Yeah,
a kind word would have been nice, Pierre.
Make some predictions. Where's eBay in 5 years? You know, my sense is, given the history of this town, that the greatest competitive threats aren't from your competitors. They're from the unexpected new technology coming in over the pole that catches you blindsided, like desktop publishing did to publishing, PCs to mini computers, that sort of thing.
Absolutely. I think that eBay is really keeping its eyes, peeled in all directions, so I don't see them being blindsided. I think the growth will continue to be huge. Think about, they've grown revenues 125% in the last year, and that's a year with not only the dot-com bust, but also a huge recession. I mean, they really are an amazing force, much more overseas, and as I say, I think more of this virtual experience.
Like racetracks and movie theaters, does eBay do better during a recession?
Yeah, Meg has been going around saying that she thinks it may be counter-cyclical because people need to empty their attics out when they need money.
So go out 5 years. How big are they? How many users?
Wow. I think we're going to hit 100 million before around then.
What about sales revenues?
Meg had said within 5 years, and this was 2 years ago, $3 billion. So, I mean, 5 billion? I don't know. The sky's the limit, I'd say.
At what point do they get limited by the web itself?
They've done a good job of in the early days, the site kept crashing. They had all these technological problems. They were up, I think, 99.5% of the time last year. So I don't think that's going to be the problem. There are scalability issues, I guess. If everyone in the world is on it, what do you do when the winning, bidder in your auction lives in Lahore, Pakistan, and you're not? I don't know. I mean, that's more of a leap of faith, certainly, than selling to Muncie, Indiana. But I think these are solvable problems.
What about, there are major questions, though, about currency transactions and trading and that sort of thing. How is eBay involved in this at all? If you buy something from Kuala Lumpur and you got this big currency problem, they're not helping you, are they?
Well, the seller determines what currency they'll take, and most sellers just take dollars. And also, eBay is creating more and more of these country-specific sites. So a lot of people in Britain are buying on the British site, which is in pound sterling, or in Germany, Deutschmarks. So there is that option, but anyone in the world is free to work on eBay.com as well.
Any other fears for eBay? What can go wrong with this model? I mean, you call it the perfect store, but Sears was the perfect store at one point. So was Montgomery Ward's, and it's gone. What happens to eBay in the worst scenario?
They're petrified all the time. Certainly there are still big players who could do them damage. One scenario is Microsoft tried to get in on auctions, but suppose they built something into Windows, which, as we know, they force everyone to use everything they want on Windows, and suddenly in order to have your computer operate, you had to place bids on their auctions. There's always potential threats, but I really think eBay is up to the challenge.
One more question, and that is, Microsoft didn't have any competitors left either, but they forgot one, which was the United States government. At one point, eBay was being investigated under antitrust. Is that a danger? They own the marketplace completely.
It's always a danger, but the thing to remember about antitrust law is it's not illegal to have a monopoly. Not that they do, and remember, Amazon and Yahoo, big internet players, are both in the space. Not illegal to have monopoly, illegal to behave anti-competitively, and other than that up for sale purchase a long time ago, I haven't seen any signs of it.
Would you buy eBay stock?
I can't. I cover them, but
but the book's done. You're so conflicted it wouldn't matter anyway.
In 1999, I had this idea to write a book. I should have just bought the stock and not written the book. But
so what are you working on now?
I just started a new job at the New York Times, and they've sort of told me not to take on any new projects. So I'm following orders.
Once this tour's over, it's back to the gray lady.
Back to the grind, exactly.
Terrific. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
you all enjoyed tonight's program of the Commonwealth Club Silicon Valley. Again, we'd like to thank Adam Cohen, author of The Perfect Store, Inside eBay, Mike Malone, editor of Forbes ASAP, and to our audience here in Palo Alto, and those of you joining us at home. And now this meeting of the Commonwealth Club Silicon Valley, part of the nation's largest and oldest public affairs forum, is adjourned.
Adam Cohen is the former chief technology writer for Time magazine and is currently an editorial board member of the New York Times. The Perfect Store, Inside eBay, is published by Little Brown and Company on the web at twbookmark.com.